In the same way Bitcoin created money that doesn't rely on legacy finance, Idea Market aims to build credibility for information without relying on institutions like legacy media, academia, or governments. That's some serious Web3 ethos right there. And on this episode, I talk with Idea Market founder Mike Elias about the vision and the process. And of course, we cover all the pluses and minuses of building on Arbitrum and the resources and approaches to doing it right. The unfortunate thing is that between the time we scheduled this interview and the recording, Mike and his team began contemplating the future of Idea Market. And between the recording and today, they announced plans to shut the platform down. Still lots to gain here, though. Number one, the problem Idea Market went after is an important one that we will need to solve. They had an interesting approach, and it's one we're thinking about. Two, the docs and platform are out there, and Mike encourages you to build on them. Three, if you're going to build, it's going to be important that you understand the reality of how difficult it's going to be. Not so that you don't do it, but so that you're ready. And number four, Mike's experience in building on Arbitrum is still as relevant as ever. In terms of disclosures for today's episode, I have never worked with Mike or Idea Market in the past, and I only did some basic testing to get ready for this episode. That said, Mike was a huge help to me in getting this podcast launched. He was the first episode I recorded, and his intros led to at least 2 other interviews so far. So a big thank you to Mike for his transparency, his willingness to share, and for all the help with getting this show off the ground. Here we go. Welcome to Ready Layer 2 with me, Get.Small. This is a podcast for the founders, innovators, and experimenters building the future of Web3 on Arbitrum. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Don. Excited to be here. And I love the name of your podcast, by the way. It's clever.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I felt like it captured the moment, if you will, capture what we're trying to accomplish here. And you're one of our very early guests, and I'm just excited to bring you to the audience with the goal in mind of helping those innovators and founders just get a sense for how to build better on top of Arbitrum, how to get situated, what tools are available, all of that. So that's what I want to talk with you today about, share with the audience. So let's just start with what you're working on. Idea Market, what does it do and who is it for?
Sure. So Idea Market is, think of it this way. If Bitcoin is money without banks, Idea Market is credibility without institutions. We're trying to find ways to make the world's best information credible and legitimate without going through the typical channels like media corporations, universities, governments, and things like that, that tend to have the job of arbiter of truth or of authority of knowledge and so on. They decide what information it's acceptable to believe and to act on and to make policies based on. And because that power is so concentrated, it tends to be abused. And that's the problem that we've always set out to solve. And we've done a number of experiments with our products to route around that and build new ways to do that. And the current product is a social network that's like Twitter in that you can make short posts, but also users are invited to rate each post on a scale of 1 to 100 to indicate your agreement or disagreement with the post. So if someone says it's scientific, but something that it would take a long time for an institution to agree with, something like broccoli cures cancer. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But regardless, if it is true, if there is value in something that's controversial or not in the interest of the knowledge institutions to verify, they'll work hard to avoid it or delay it or something like that. And in the meantime, maybe lives could be saved. You can make a post that says broccoli cures cancer, and in the time that it takes for a tweet to go viral, you doctors or influencers or other respected people or even non-respected people to express their opinion about this and express their confidence level about it. And in this way, you can build credibility for a piece of information via public petition. You can show, instead of waiting for CNN to agree with you or the FDA to agree with you, you can say, hey, look at all these people who agree with me. There's Balaji, there's Naval, there's Mark Andreessen, there's Joe Rogan, whatever, whoever opinion you respect. And in that way, we want to drastically shorten the time it takes between the world's best information becoming discovered and the world's best information being accepted as common knowledge, because that's something that I think frustrates a lot of people these days, that the official authoritative knowledge of our culture tends to be downright terrible and not at all valuable, and usually, in every important case, deceptive in some way, or tyrannical, or just horribly, that power is horribly abused. So we want to try to find a new system so that the best information in the world can have its effects without needing to be passed on and approved by these gatekeepers. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's obviously kind of a monumental problem, right? And this is something that I think everybody today can agree that at a minimum, the institutions and the gatekeepers have quite a credibility problem going on right now themselves. And that could be through malice, that could be through incompetence, that could be for a lot of different reasons. So like the problem is clear, and I think the need for something better is clear. I think the listener would agree. And to be fair too, this is not a new problem. This goes all the way back to like yellow journalism in the Spanish-American War, right? This stuff's been going on forever, and that's probably still even a recent example, just 120, 30 years ago. So yeah, that part's clear. I'm just curious, do you not think that is already, at least to an extent, happening on Twitter, let's say, right? Like you mentioned Andreessen and Rogan and those guys. And I can go on there right now and I could probably find out what Andreessen's tweeting about. And he's probably taking some authoritative stance on something today or very recently. What's missing there, do you think? What is the missing component that you're trying to solve for?
Yeah, I do think that is happening in a large sense in an organic way. But the funny thing is, it's happening on a platform that's not actually designed to do that. Twitter is great for spreading messages, period, just spreading. But what we're trying to do is pool social capital in the same place behind an idea. And if Mark Andreessen tweets something or retweets it, you can't see immediately what other important, powerful people feel exactly the same way. You can't see the extent to which they feel the same way. You can't see the reasons for which they feel the same way. And so on Twitter, you can get a general sense of what people believe, but this is a way of really concentrating that and putting it in a frame whose express purpose is to build credibility for a thing and to track public opinion of a specific idea. So Twitter kind of does, by accident and in a general kind of nebulous sense, what we're trying to do in a concrete and designed for sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I suppose we can start with that.
Okay, that works. So it's more of a Twitter is a broadcast model that is being somewhat improperly deployed to build credibility around something.
I wouldn't say it's improper. I wouldn't say it's improper. Just that it's the best tool that we have for the job so far. And frankly, the tool could be a lot better. People don't realize how quickly something could be made legitimate if we could see all the legitimacy in one place. Twitter doesn't really show the legitimacy. It just shows, hey, Mark Andreessen said this. Naval retweeted this.
Right.
There's not a lot of information there. It's just one guy here or there. But if you collect all those one guys that everyone cares about, and then you can see exactly what they believe and the confidence that they have and why they have that confidence or don't have that confidence, and then you can easily look back through time and see, who was confident about what, when. And since it's a scale of 0 to 100, we're really turning personal opinions into data. There's a database. Who believed X with confidence above 50 at time T? Twitter doesn't enable that. There's not, all the AI in the world can't parse exactly what Mark Andreessen might mean if he says something controversial. But if you take a simple statement, broccoli cures cancer, for example, and Mark Andreessen goes, I'm 92% confident. And Balaji goes, I'm 69% confident. And Naval goes, I'm 73% confident. You get this directness and clarity of data that Twitter can't provide. And that's not Twitter's fault. It's just not a tool that's built for.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I could totally see that. So I think that might have been the part I was missing, is there's this explicit confidence level that's going along with that. And that's what the slider is for. So if I'm going on there and I'm going to weigh in on what I think about what Mark Andreessen said today, I'm going to say, I am 90% confident that he is correct or incorrect, and here's why. Or I'm 10% confident, which is interesting in and of itself, because hopefully, and this is where you get everyone feels like they have to have an opinion, and you read the comments on Twitter, and you just have like stupidness going through there. If I had to write, I am 10% confident in my position on this, I probably would cease typing that into the prompt and go about my business.
Maybe.
So you might not see that.
Yeah, and then at the same time, though, it might just be worth seeing what other people think. I might share something I'm
Hmm.
10% confident in just to see who disagrees with me or who agrees with me or whatever. Like it might even be that the fact that you can disagree with yourself publicly is a little bit liberating, but I hadn't thought of it that way yet. So that's
It's
interesting.
fascinating. That's very fascinating. Okay, so let's go through the mechanics. So that sounds like an important mechanism, obviously, in what you're trying to accomplish here in terms of aggregating the opinions to allow somebody to discern a consensus. What else is going on there? Are you somehow presenting as in this is what all of these folks have coalesced around? Are you like trying to formulate the opinion in any way or quantify
No.
it?
In fact, it's a core part of our philosophy that we want to avoid becoming just another authority that tells you what to believe. We don't want to say, hey, the average opinion is X, therefore you should believe X. We don't want to be just another authority to outsource your thinking to. I'm just taking the long route around answering this question because it's really important and I want to give the full answer.
Sure.
That our philosophy is basically that any judgment about what's true in the secular sense especially comes down to a matter of personal opinion. It doesn't matter how much scientific research you do. At the end, it's some scientific personal opinion, expert personal opinion, lay personal opinion, whatever. You cannot escape the fact that individuals are making judgments about what's true, what's important to include, exclude, ignore, accept, etc. And the effectiveness of our public knowledge, of our common knowledge, is based on how effective we are at trusting people whose opinions deserve that trust. Everyone has an opinion. The FDA has an opinion. Joe Rogan has an opinion. Balaji has an opinion. The question is not, yes, it's what's true, but the way to get the best shot at what's true is whose opinion deserves trust. You look back at their track record, everyone has always had an opinion about something. Whose opinions have proven useful and therefore are more worth trusting now? Because of that kind of inevitable responsibility and freedom that we have to come up with personal opinions, we don't want to try to override that by force of authority. We don't want to become just another institution that says X is true, you should believe me, period. I don't think that's going to work again anymore in human history as long as we have the internet, because there's so much information out there that people can do their own research, and if they don't trust you, they don't trust you, and it doesn't matter what you think if they don't trust you.
Right.
So yes, we're by design avoiding making a particular judgment on anything. What our main goal is to collect this opinion data so that we can use whatever personal criteria we like to synthesize it and make meaning out of it. So one way to decide what's true is you take the average of the crowd. If you want to do that's fine. We're not going to make you, we're not going to prevent you. Or you could take 10 of your favorite people and average their opinion. Or you could do some other data analysis thing. We basically just want to collect the information and leave the field open, because deciding how you should determine the truth is just another way of determining the truth for you. And that's where we think the injustice lies.
Yeah, right on. Injustice and probably an ineffectiveness too, right? Because a lot
That's
of our
really more
systems
important, actually. Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of our
Ineffectiveness.
systems are just so complicated right now that this is not like solving a math problem. This is not, my opinion is that 2 + 2 = 5 versus the correct answer that you can prove with mathematical laws is true. Things are too complicated oftentimes, what we're discussing on the internet. So I think even trying to arrive at a truth would be foolhardy. It's just not something that's possible. So I applaud that approach to it. And you're taking all this information. You're basically you're creating the substrate that allows for people to put their opinions out in a consistent and comparable manner. So you're allowing for qualitative data to be created so that I can go and look at it. You're doing this on the blockchain in a way that's immutable. It's going to be there forever. And one of the things I saw in your docs that I loved, you could just said it, is you can always know who thought what and when, which I love, because the kind of borrowing of ideas and then sharing them as your own is a pastime for some thought leaders. And I think it would be really nice to be able to identify who are the, as I come to believe something's true, who are the people who arrived there first?
Yeah.
And maybe I can start to put a little bit more weight in stuff that they're saying that I don't yet understand. Something along those lines. You agree?
Yeah, that's 100% it. I just think it would
Okay.
be very interesting. Like, for example, when COVID started, Balaji Srinivasan and a bunch of other tech people were ringing the bell on that, if not months before the New York Times finally said, hey, Americans, we need to pay attention to this and wear
Yep.
masks and
I
isolate
remember
and all
that.
that stuff. And if Idea Market had been widespread at that time, there would be a database of personal opinion and people saying, I'm confident COVID's going to affect the United States. I'm not confident COVID's going to affect the United States. And you'd be able to do a query. You'd be able to say, hey, who was over 90% confident about this before date? And then you'd have a list of people. And then you could take that list and then apply it to something recent. All right, what do all the people who called COVID in advance of the New York Times think about this current thing that's going on? You can really
Right.
filter people by the tests they've passed.
Yeah, right on, right on. Okay, very cool. So I think that sets the stage for this really well. And this then, who is it for? This is for anybody, right? For anybody who wants to learn, who wants to share, who wants to explore things like this out in the open. So that's an easy answer. Where are you guys at in terms of your adoption, deployment, and that whole cycle?
Sure. So we've released several products historically and done a couple of pivots. And the current product has been live since September 1st, but we're actually struggling financially right now. So whether we're able to pay our AWS bill or not, we'll see if the website is working by the time you hear this. But in the meantime, if the product is not usable, the docs will be readable, docs.ideamarket.io. So basically, everything is done. The MVP is live and it's really robust for an MVP. We have had some usage and it's been exciting, especially the first week after we launched, because there are some financial dynamics in there as well. But it's really kind of an uncertain moment just in terms of our financing and where things are going to go. But I still very much believe in the approach that we've taken, and I'm happy to help anyone build on what we've done.
Interesting. So first of all, sorry to hear that things aren't going the way. Obviously, I imagine you planned them, but I'd say there's still a ton of value that we could share with a listener here in terms of the experience building it. And frankly, this is interesting in and of itself because if you are a founder, a potential founder, listening to this, these are realities that you have to account for, that you have to be aware of. That everything goes exactly as you plan. Well, thank you for still coming on to talk with us here today in spite of that uncertainty. But let's then shift right into that and let's talk about, you said you launched in September. You obviously have been working on it before then. I think you guys were going to be part of the Arbitrum Odyssey. Well, we're part of it while it was briefly running. So let's talk about your history and working with Arbitrum in particular for those founders who are heading down the same path as you. And let's first say, number one, what was it about Arbitrum that drew you here in the first place?
Sure. Our goal was always in building this alternative credibility infrastructure. We realized early on that if we succeeded at the scale that we were aiming for, Idea Market would become the global battleground for propaganda. They wouldn't be trying to put their guys in charge of newspapers or buy newspapers outright like Jeff Bezos and things like that. They would be trying to manipulate how Idea Market makes things appear or disappear. And so having that amount of power kind of vying for it and playing with it, kind of like you expect with Bitcoin, we wanted to have the most secure solution that we could find. And we originally launched on layer one, but the gas fees were prohibitively expensive and we just couldn't get
Sure.
any usage. So as soon as possible, we started exploring Arbitrum and Optimism. And since those are the canonical Ethereum layer twos, we wanted to inherit as much security from Ethereum layer one as we could for that reason. And we actually started with Optimism because they had announced in 2021, in early 2021, that they were going to go live with their mainnet in like March or April or something like that. And we had just launched in mid-February and didn't want to wait at all because new product, but incredible gas fees. No, let's get on.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually, or our CTO rather, I'm a non-technical founder, but our CTO did all the legwork to get us ready to launch on Optimism. And then for reasons that I'm sure were wise and prudent, they delayed their launch until July or August was their announcement, something like that. We started looking into Arbitrum, and it turned out that our CTO, who I have a great deal of respect for, and he actually ended up winning 3 of the largest bug bounties in Ethereum history. So I trust his judgment on such things. He ended up preferring some of the technical solutions that Arbitrum had to problems that I can't recall. But he ended up just generally preferring the way Arbitrum handled certain things. And when the opportunity came, we launched with them instead and never looked back.
Awesome. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective to have built at least the prototype, right? Built a chunk of the functionality on Optimism first, and then having that kind of direct one-to-one comparison. I'd put a lot of weight in his opinion on that as well. So that's pretty fascinating.
I actually before you start your next question, I just found a message that he sent me that I can just read verbatim, where he gives some comments on the technical features here. He says, "There were a few minor technical things where I preferred Arbitrum. The one I can remember was with contract deployment. There were certain prohibited opcodes which could cause issues when deploying a contract, which took an address as a constructor parameter. Since a byte in that address could be falsely interpreted as a prohibited opcode, this could cause the whole deployment to fail and you'd have to redeploy from scratch. There were ways to work around it, but it was an inconvenience." That may be with reference to an issue that Optimism has. As I said, I'm a non-technical founder, so I'm literally just reading words here, so I hope that makes sense to somebody out there. But also to reassure everybody, he also adds, these things would not have influenced the decision between the two L2s much. 99% of it was who will launch first. And he adds that if I had to decide nowadays again, when both are live, which to launch with, I would choose depending on who has the larger ecosystem and traction and user base.
Got it.
So there's nothing bad being spoken about Optimism there. That's just his full.
Yeah, right on. Yeah. Right on. I think that's a good way to look at it, right? Is where do I have the chance to have the most impact and reach the people that I'm trying to reach and have the effect that I'm trying to have? Yeah, certainly makes good sense. But the notion of looking at L2 because of gas fees makes total sense especially for a social application. It makes sense for almost any application these days, in my opinion. But yeah, no, that driver makes sense. Obviously, security is a concern. You guys felt both Optimism and Arbitrum were in a position to satisfy that with the way that they're structured as L2s, building off of Ethereum's security. So that all makes good sense. Then I'd ask, what was the experience like? So once you guys launched, knowing you're a non-technical founder, there's a whole bunch of non-technical things that go into launching a product, obviously. So tell us about that. What was your experience in, whether it be working with the folks at Arbitrum itself or others in the ecosystem? How was it as a non-technical founder dealing with the issues you were working on?
Yeah, we've always found the Arbitrum team to be incredibly responsive and friendly, and I've always felt very blessed by that because whenever we had an issue, be it technical or otherwise, they would be available very quickly to help us out, even some of their top-level people, even their founders at times. And I always really appreciated that, especially just doing the gravity of the work that they're doing and on the scale that they're doing it, that they managed to be so available. I don't know if it's just because we were one of their first products and they like us, but it's always been just a huge blessing because sometimes you have a question or a bottleneck or an issue and the only way to deal with it is to handle it through their intercession. And they've been fantastic to work with and very responsive and helpful.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What types of resources did you all find to take advantage of throughout? And this could be stuff from the team at Arbitrum. This could be stuff just that you found on the web, things with other founders. Like, put yourself in the mindset here. Obviously, you're talking to another founder. It's like, where can I go get help? What are the things I should be looking at, et cetera?
Yeah, our tech team had success talking to them in the Arbitrum Discord. And also, we've just been in touch over Telegram with their team. We have a group chat. So a lot of the co-building and interaction we've had is just direct. As to resources, as a founder, I've just had blinders on to everything that wasn't directly related to my own project. So I'm afraid I don't really know in a more general sense where I'd advise people to look in order to find resources. But there do seem to be an exploding ecosystem of projects out there to fulfill all of the typical niches. So I guess I would just advise a general outlook for if there's something that you expect to do on layer 1 that you want to do on layer 2, there's probably multiple teams working on it already if they haven't even solved it.
Sure, right on.
Oh, the other thing, one thing I will mention is, two actually. Chainlist, chainlist.org enables you to add various chains, including Arbitrum, to MetaMask in
Yep.
1 or 2 clicks, and that drastically smoothed out our onboarding process because it was no
Absolutely.
longer like, all right, read this Medium article about how to install Arbitrum into MetaMask, then go kiss your mother, and then come back and
Yeah.
eat a pound of
Yep.
chocolate, and then turn the key to the right, and then turn the key to the left, and flip upside down. And now you're ready to use Idea Market. It's like that scene. It's like the blowing bubbles scene from SpongeBob, where there's like this elaborate technique to blow bubbles. That's how it felt to use Idea Market.
Yep.
in the
I could
beginning.
see that. Yeah. Yep.
I
My
hope
experience was similar, and I noticed how you guys use that in your documentation for the onboarding is go to chainlist.org, click add there. And what's great about that too is then you can trust that's been vetted by the chainlist team.
Yeah.
And you know that you're putting the right RPC in and all that good stuff. So yeah, when I found that was a welcome addition to my tool set, so I agree with you on that one.
Oh yeah, that was just a massive boon. Like, just it's hard enough to launch a product to an audience as small as the crypto community, and then when
Yep.
it's cut even smaller by the fact that it's an L2 and a particular L2, it's just that's potentially the roughest thing. So
Yeah, right on.
anything that can broaden that bottleneck is hugely valuable. And the other thing that we would involve in that onboarding process is something called HOP protocol, HOP. And HOP protocol allows you to transfer Ethereum from layer 1 to Arbitrum very simply and very quickly. It has a Uniswap-like interface, and it takes maybe 5 minutes to move ETH from layer 1 to layer 2, and then you're ready to go. Those two have just been a great help. And there might even be better solutions out there by now, but I recommend those if you haven't used them before.
Yeah, right on. I think the important thing is the message is here to think about, like, how are people going to onboard onto your platform? And yeah, the being on layer 2 right now is certainly an additional hurdle. People that haven't done it yet have to figure out those additional steps. And I think that'd be a great thing to reference in Idea Market's documents that you mentioned. Those are definitely, we'll link them up in the show notes, is you guys literally walk us through using those tools with screenshots of those tools and circling them. And I think just for a founder to think that through, like, how is your documentation going to make this easy for people, or at least as easy as possible? So I'd encourage the listener to check those documents out as a good example of how to do that. Just in terms of making contact with other founders like yourself, like I know you mentioned that you're in a Telegram group with the folks from Arbitrum. Does that get you in touch with, or are you able to get in touch with other founders in a similar way, or how would you find other founders if you wanted to talk with folks?
Yeah, there is a founders only Telegram with the Arbitrum team, and it's all Arbitrum founders and Arbitrum projects, and they connect in there to arrange integrations and collaborations and things like that. It's very well behaved because it's private, but if you're working on something in the ecosystem, I'm sure they'll let you in. I'm not exactly sure who to talk to about that though, but it exists. So plug away at it. And
but that is directly with the Arbitrum team.
Yes, the Arbitrum team themselves is in there. It does have the smell of an official group. And yeah, if you can't figure out how to get in there, trying to think of who you might DM on Twitter, maybe just message the official Arbitrum handle, because a team member runs it and they all know it. They all talk. So yeah.
Okay. That seems like a good approach. And then just generally speaking, then, as you look back on your last 18 months or so of doing this with Arbitrum, is there anything that comes to mind that you're like, a new founder should know this, or a new founder should avoid this? Any kind of best practices, worst practices that you can think of?
What I actually want to advise is the amount that your audience gets reduced when you use Arbitrum as opposed to layer 1 or web 2 is so drastic that in my case, if I had to start over, I probably wouldn't do it. But that's me and we were working on things are niche and not typical finance apps. Like we're doing a new kind of social network, and our social network, it turns out, might not even need to be web 3 at first because it's a new UX, and maybe it would have been smarter for us to just build it in web 2 first. So I'm sharing that because that's where my head is at right now. However, that might only apply to few to no other projects in the space.
It's an interesting thing to think about, right? Because sometimes as founders, we get really excited about our ideas and we see the best case scenario ahead of us. And if I'm building something and trying to launch something onto Arbitrum in particular, that is an additional risk that I need to take into consideration. I think that's really good advice to share with the listener. I don't think that's in any way like that you're not bad talking an ecosystem or a network in any way. That's a reality. And I think it's most important for us to think about things in reality so that we can make good decisions.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
So,
I've never regretted using Arbitrum among L2s or alternative chains because every week there's a problem, there's a new problem with an alternative chain. And I just feel so sheltered under the Arbitrum umbrella that I've never regretted that at all. So
right
yeah,
on.
if it is a fit to cut down your audience that much, by all means, Arbitrum is great. Yeah.
And to think about maybe like to cut down your audience for a period of time too, right? Because it's not a permanent thing either. Is
That's true.
that can your platform survive and thrive and grow with a reduced audience at first while things get caught up? And are you
Yeah.
willing to take that
Yeah.
risk? And I think
Well,
that's probably a really healthy way of looking at it, frankly.
yeah, and we honestly had the hardest possible experience with it because we were among the first. We were probably in
Right.
the first 10 projects to ever launch on Arbitrum. And so there was a lot of the resources and ecosystem that is there now was not there then. So I might just be complaining about a world that doesn't exist anymore.
And I
Yeah.
think to an extent it does and it will, right? And I think that's true in Web3 in general, right? Like it's
Yeah.
immediately a
Yeah.
drastically reduced attack surface, if you will, when it comes to building an audience for whatever your platform
Yeah.
is. And I think anybody building something needs to confront that and account into their plans. And now you're taking that and going down a level, right? We're layer 2. You're explicitly separating yourself one layer further.
Yeah.
So you guys, your crypto natives who just haven't made that leap yet, who are like, I don't know what the hell's going on in those L2s. I hear people talking them all the time, but I've never bridged there. That's a whole other thing I got to figure out. I'll do it if there's a good enough reason to. But that's a friction that you have to deal with and you have to accept and then balance that against is the reduced gas fees and the increased transaction speeds, does that benefit offset the time it's going to take to build an audience or the increased pressure I'm going to have to
Yeah.
build an audience?
But it's also, sorry to interject, but I just
No,
want
you're
to
good. Go
provide
for
some
it.
counter evidence to myself here. It also may work in your favor because if a smaller audience is also going to be more passionate, like they're already in this niche, it could also be an advantage depending on what you're doing to appeal to the Arbitrum people. It's a tribe and they have a
Perfect.
unique set of needs that only other Arbitrum people can meet. So it could also be an advantage. It really just depends on the nature of your project.
Yeah, right on. I think that's a great takeaway here, and it could be positive, could be a negative. The important thing is to acknowledge what the situation is, what that reality is, and then plan strategically around it. How are you going to take advantage of it? If you identify a way, how are you going to do it? How are you going to educate or how are you going to execute? How are you going to measure it to make sure that you're not blowing smoke up your own ass about the things working out that I said we're going to work out? No, this was the plan. This is the strategy. This is how we're going to measure it. And you can do that as you go. So I think that's awesome advice for anybody thinking about going down this path.
I'm really glad. In response to the same question, you were asking, what should other founders know before they embark on the Arbitrum journey? And there's a special foresight that the Arbitrum team has had that I feel is better in story form than for me to just say what it is. And the first product that we ever launched in early 2021 was a market. We were trying to do NASDAQ meets Reddit a thing, where you turn information into a tradable asset like a stock or something like that. And so when we launched this, we had over $1 million in deposits. People were using it and buying stuff just in case it blows up and becomes the next NASDAQ, right? So there's a lot of money on the line. And this was on layer 1. And then when we built our layer 2 version of it, we had to invite people to bridge their money over from layer 1. And our CTO at the time gave us notice that, oh, by the way, there's this incredibly rare thing which could happen, which is if the gas fees spike while you're bridging the money from layer 1, the money could just get stuck between layers and there's no way to recover it. So be careful of that. Make sure if the gas fees go up, you increase the spending limit or something like that to make sure that doesn't happen. And it never got anywhere close. We never had any problem with that, except we had an investor put a lot of money into Idea Market on day 1, on launch day, in order to buy the assets while they're new. And he had never bridged them out. Even though we pivoted the product, he had never bridged his tokens and bridged his money and withdrew it. So he was finally doing this one day when we told him that we were going to pivot anyway. And he happened to do that on the day that Arbitrum Odyssey launched.
Oh, geez.
And so if you remember, I mean, I'm sure you're aware because Arbitrum Odyssey has not yet resumed because it invited so much traffic onto the network that everything came to a standstill and the gas fees skyrocketed. And his money got stuck in the bridging because the gas fees were astronomical. And that little infinitesimal edge case that our CTO had warned us about an incredibly long time ago by this point happened at the time when the most money that's ever flowed through Idea Market was trying to find its way out. And it belonged to an investor who was a friend and who has helped us out and has no intention of losing this money. But it is stuck now. It is stuck.
Okay.
And blockchain systems, they are not designed to have reversible transactions. They are not designed to be touchable by human beings. Yep. And we're just like stumped. Our whole team is like 99% sure that the money is stuck. So this kind of ties into a personal moment in my life that's just really extraordinary, which is I was born and raised Jewish. I married a Protestant, and I've found Jesus in 2020, and I've been considering Catholicism over the summer when this happened. I was researching Catholicism by myself because the theology was really speaking to me and stuff like that, and just was having a good experience of it. And one of the things that the Protestants are leery about is the emphasis on the Virgin Mary. They're like, why do Catholics have so much reverence for the Virgin Mary? And there have been a little bit of historical amnesia there, given that the Virgin Mary is one of the most discussed topics over the first 1,500 years of the church, just not so much the last 500 in the Protestant world. But as someone who had been going with my wife to a Protestant church, I was also hesitant about the Virgin Mary. What's the deal here? And someone had recommended a book to me written by the Vatican's official exorcist. And it was just like in basic instructions for priests to know about exorcism because there's a lot of evil out there and people don't know this stuff. It wasn't like a horror movie. It was just like an instruction manual.
Okay.
And there was one little random line in there where he said, oh, by the way, like a lot of people have had miracles associated with wearing the miraculous medal. And it's been called the miraculous medal because of all the miracles. And the miraculous medal is a little portrait of the Virgin Mary. I was like, all right, I like miracles. I'll get one. So I ordered one of these miraculous medals, and it was going to arrive sometime in the next week. And meanwhile, here we are trying to bridge hundreds of thousands of dollars from layer 1 to Arbitrum, and it gets stuck, right? And we're 99% sure that we're just in trouble. And I prayed my first prayer to the Virgin Mary. I said, Mother Mary, I don't have that medal yet, but I need to call one in. I need to call in a favor. Just a few hours later, my wife actually suggested that I check with our old CTO who would have given me that warning in the first place. He had moved on to become an advisor by this time. And he said, oh yeah, actually reach out to the Arbitrum team and let's see what they say. And the Arbitrum team had built in a 1-week grace period where you can reach in and poke a transaction with a stick. This is just unheard of. There's nothing in the crypto space like this. Nothing. No. But they sent us a URL. They said, put the transaction ID from Etherscan in here, and then you can pay another gas fee and poke the money with a stick and get it moving along. And we were able to recover all of the money. The investor got all of his money out that same day.
Spectacular.
And it was spectacular.
Yeah, it had to be a bit of a relief, right?
Yeah, unbelievable. Am I going to get sued for everything I have?
Yeah,
it was just didn't know what to make of this.
Yep.
And just the icing on top is my wife and I were actually staying somewhere else, helping somebody, and I had to run back home to get something from my house. And when I arrived, the medal was sitting there on the doorstep, like it had been delivered that day.
Nice.
So kind of a technical story, kind of a religious story, but
yeah, I'll roll into one.
But yeah, man, the Arbitrum team's foresight to create that loophole. Wow, I don't even know how much trouble it saved me. It just
Yeah,
incredible.
I could imagine that would have
Incredible.
been bad news.
Yeah.
And I have to imagine you and your team were very relieved
Yeah.
when that stick poke worked. So
Yeah.
congrats.
Yeah. So other founders you should know, like they're really looking out for you. And Arbitrum has this little loophole for a week. You can reach in and poke a transaction with a stick if anything ever goes really wrong.
Now, that's always true, or that was true at that time because you were on the Odysseys going on, you're on the edge of Nitro coming out? Was it a temporary thing, or is that a poke with a stick option always available?
It is temporary, but I'm pretty sure it's still available. I guess the moral of the story in practical terms is if something goes wrong, just message the Arbitrum team immediately. Just immediately escalate it up to them because they might know of a solution that you don't, and it might have a clock on it.
Yeah, right on. No, that's great advice. And just obviously always to be thinking about if you're dealing with large sums of money, large sums of resources potentially, taking those precautions and working all that into your plans too. And maybe you need a miraculous medal.
You absolutely need a miraculous medal. You absolutely need a miraculous medal. No joke. I'm wearing one. I've worn one. I've not taken it off since that day.
Awesome. So yeah, no, thank you for sharing the story, and thank you for coming to share all of this. I know things are a bit up in the air for you right now. You said you documentation at least out there, people could pick up and run with it. If somebody wanted to do that, wanted to reach out any of that, what's the best way for someone to find you online?
Yeah,
keep tracking on that way.
Yeah, on Twitter, our official handle is ideamarket_IO, and my personal one is Harmony Lion. Harmony like musical harmony, lion like the big cat, Harmony Lion 1 on Twitter. And yeah, please reach out. I'm fascinated by this problem space, and I just think there's so much low-hanging fruit. I think it'll technically be very easy to improve drastically the way our public information curation world works. And I'm really excited to see some of those breakthroughs because the internet means we have the world's best information. It's not an access problem. It's a trust problem. We're trusting the wrong people to decide what's worth investigating and what's worth believing.
Yeah, right on, man. Certainly a problem worth solving, and one that touches literally everything we do. So yeah, appreciate your willingness to take a stab at that and try to solve one of the world's big problems. Appreciate you coming to share with us. It's been awesome. We'll stay in touch, and if we got some future projects or this thing takes back off, maybe we'll do some follow-up.
Sounds great, Don. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to Ready Layer 2. If you're an Arbitrum builder with a story to share, then hit me up on Twitter @GitSmall, GITSMOL. Learn more at gitsmall.com.